Welcome to the Choose on Purpose podcast, where leaders live with intention. I'm your host, Becky Ploutz, and today we are talking about the power of a pause. And really, I'm looking at moving from overthinking to being in flow and, how mindfulness really boosts productivity. And if you are ready to break free from overthinking and step into flow, then this is the episode for you. Because we're going to talk more about learning how mindfulness clears mental clutter, sharpens focus, and really helps you take aligned action with ease. So, thinking about even the topic of how there's a connection between mindfulness and overthinking and productivity. If you've been stuck in analysis paralysis or overthinking every move or feeling like you're doing a lot, but not actually making progress, then you're going to want to listen up. Okay. Because this matters. And it matters that you actually recognize this because overthinking is often mistaken for being thorough or being careful. But in reality, it can really hijack your productivity and keep you from taking the aligned action, the mindful movement. And mindfulness is really a bridge that helps you shift from mental clutter to focused, aligned action. So when we're caught in our heads, we disconnect from being in the present moment. And that's where the real action happens, right? Like when we're present in the moment. So thinking about the overthinking loop and how it really hurts our productivity, overthinking, it creates decision fatigue, right? And the more that we analyze, the harder it is to move forward, thinking through all of the things and getting stuck in the details. And this is where perfectionism and fear of failure and making the wrong choices or whatever that looks like, it really feeds that overthinking and making those seemingly simple tasks feel more overwhelming or more pressurized than necessary because we're in that loop, which keeps us stuck. And the longer that we stay in our heads, the less we engage in the work that truly moves the needle forward for our vision, for working on purpose. So here's a self check-in. Do you ever find yourself rereading an email 10 times before sending it, right? Like before you send it, are you rereading it, revising your website maybe for months before launching, right? Or thinking about all of the different ways that something could go wrong before even starting. This is where you can find yourself and catch yourself and fully start to understand that you're on that overthinking loop and how it's very likely that it's hurting your productivity to move forward. So let's talk about like how can mindfulness break that cycle of overthinking for you? So mindfulness, it's about being present in the moment. It's about being aware and also staying away from judgment while you're in that awareness. And it really helps us observe our thoughts without getting stuck in them, right? Just understanding that's a thought and you can let that go. I actually had a friend um, give the visual and the understanding about like a thought bubble. So there's a thought, put it in a bubble, put it up, and then boop, even motion to your finger. Your finger is popping the bubble, like when you're a kid and you're running around popping bubbles, right? There's a thought, put it in a bubble and pop it. So letting go, right, without getting in that overwhelming idea of what the thought is and getting in that cycle. So breaking the cycle of overthinking. When we're mindful, we respond with more intention instead of reacting, right? Out of fear or out of doubt. And I mean, there's studies that show that mindfulness improves focus, it improves and enhances our problem solving skills, and it really helps regulate your emotions, all of which increases your productivity. So, right, like working to make sure that we're catching those thoughts, popping those bubbles, and breaking those cycles of overthinking is so powerful to the way that we operate and the progress that we make to, have productivity throughout our day while being present in the moment. So a practical tip would be to, work on starting your day with even 5 minutes of, or two, right? Couple of mindful minutes for breathing or journaling your thoughts, especially if they're anxious thoughts. Journal them, remove those from your mind instead of diving into a task from, a reactive state. Pause, breathe, like belly breathe, and then, right, set an intention for what you're going to do. Just 2 to 5 minutes, even starting your day like that. I would love to challenge you to take that as a tip and an opportunity to play with that this week. And then think about, how much mindfulness, being aware leads to more productive actions for you. So, how do you use mindfulness to actually get things done, right? Like, here's some strategies. I think I have three that will help you shift from that overthinking to intentionally being more productive. And I've shared these before, but here's them in a different, quicker, like, description, right? The 5 second rule. Like, when you're stuck in that overthinking, count it down and then take the immediate action, just like the Mel Robbins book. 5 second rule, count it down, take the action, move from the overthinking on it, and go. Okay. The second strategy is to single task something versus multitasking. Now, this is definitely one that I am always practicing strengthening for myself. I tend to have a podcast going and something else actively going, and I'll still answer my kids' question if they come in and ask me something, like, right, I'm still finding and catching myself multitasking too much, and then I'll use the power of the pause. I will stop doing what I'm doing. I will give my full attention, all of those things, and I'm still working on it. So multitasking increases stress. This is what I know. It increases stress and it reduces our efficiency. So, right, like when you use single tasking over multitasking, you're getting things done more efficiently and with less stress, which is better for your mental health and your physical health, right? So use some time blocks to focus on one high impact task at a time. So one of the things that I have worked on doing is that I'm listening to podcasts in the car, right? Because I can only do driving and then listening to something right in the car. And I even practice only listening to my books when, or podcasts, audiobooks or podcasts, when I'm in the car alone. So when I'm on the way to get my boys from school versus when they're in the car. Now I will still do that, but I practice really, if I am in there with them, then I am in there with them mentally and physically. But so single task versus multitask. And then the third strategy is to check in before you really find yourself checking out. So before making a decision or moving forward, ask yourself, is this aligned with my bigger vision? Or am I overcomplicating it by adding this in there? And that's where I have found that I've been in that loop unknowingly, like it's just on to the next thing. So catching myself to be able to be more productive in the actions that I'm taking has been really supportive, right? And I even found myself last week doing this very late at night when I was planned to be in bed already. I was like, okay, I have this task, I'm going to get this done. And it was like taking time to download the audios for podcast clips. And I was like, okay, well, I'll listen to this podcast in the meantime. And I was doing both things at once and then not realizing when I could move on to the next piece of the actual task I was working on to get done. And it ended up taking 3 times as long because I was listening to a podcast or an audiobook and doing the task thinking, well, this is just filling in the gap. And when I looked back at it, I was like, wow, this, when it's focused on the one task and not doing multiple things, it took a fraction of the time versus what happened to me last week. So big awareness in myself when I stop and pay attention to this as well. So I hope that supports you when you hear that. Because that was me, allowing myself to overthink things and have multiple things going at once versus being mindful and being in the flow for the one single task, right? And a big reason that we overthink in the first place has to do with fear of failure, perfectionism, the uncertainties that come up. And like in my example, right, it was more of like uncertainty, like how long is this actually going to take to download? Well, let me do something else that I want to do, which is listen to this podcast or this episode, right? Or this chapter. And I didn't know how long it was going to take. So I was just filling in the time with this other thing that, I found to be interesting or exciting. And the reality was, is it was taking me longer because then I wasn't paying attention to when it was done, like how fast it really moved. My thinking was not in alignment with my actions, right? Being focused. And, you know, overthinking leads to that analysis paralysis for me, especially like feeling stuck in the endless decision making. It's tiring. And there's some signs of overthinking that steals our momentum. And it's you're second guessing every decision. You procrastinate because things don't feel perfect yet. And you're mentally exhausted, but haven't made real progress yet, right? Like you're exhausting yourself to just do something versus you're making intentional, mindful moves that are moving you toward real progress. It's moving the needle on what you desire. And those are some signs, right? That you're the overthinking and the less productive ways that you're working aren't serving you. They're not serving your highest good. We'll say that. So how mindfulness helps you step into more of a flow, which to me, flow is, that state of really being fully immersed in your task, with more ease, more focus and attention because you're being intentional, right? So mindfulness, it quiets the noise. It reduces self-doubt and it sharpens the way that you're making decisions. So there's a balance between planning and trusting yourself to take next steps along the way with being in that flow, right? There's a harmony that happens that, yeah, you need to plan, and then you need to trust the process of the plan that you've created and the power that comes from being present in the moments because you've already made the plan. You're now in the process of taking the actions and in the flow of that. And then you get to focus on what you can do right now that's in alignment with that flow and that work and energy that you're putting out there, right? Some other techniques to overcome overthinking that have really supported me is, um, training my brain to make quicker decisions and align my decisions is like just deciding, picking something, making a change, and then taking note of it, tracking. How long am I going to try this thing out and see how it feels, what the energy's like, and really experience it and track it, right? Another thing is think tanks. I mentioned this on another podcast for sure, but you might call them a brain dump, and I call them a think tank because I like to get all the things out, look in there and see what there is. But it's all about clearing the mental clutter by writing it out. We're getting your thoughts out, organizing and prioritizing it, and then making sure that I'm using short breathing exercises, getting those belly breaths in when I feel overwhelmed or that I'm, having anxious thoughts about what I need to make decisions on. And, that's really supportive when switching tasks to reset my focus and my energy, and have those mindful transitions in my day-to-day tasks have been really helpful. Like that's another technique that I've utilized and continue to find power in. And then again, really going to time blocking and having some, freedom within structure to say, like, this is the time that I'm really going to be present in this area more than like this specific task, because then I can kind of play and have the freedom to work in that time block, being present but working in focused, sprints or chunks of time without the distractions and without the multitasking, that's a huge part of overcoming the overthinking loop for me. So I hope that these, simple techniques and strategies have really supported you. And just to like give a quick recap, because there was a lot of nuggets in here, which is overthinking creates more stress and indecisiveness, while your mindfulness is unlocking more productive, more action toward what you want. And also stepping into the flow is about trust. So trusting your skills, trusting your intuition, and trusting your next steps by being mindful. Okay. And then simple mindfulness habits help clear the mental clutter. They help clear the slate so that that can help you create momentum, right? And utilizing these simple techniques, they're going to help you with the mindfulness and to boost your productivity along the way and break free from that overthinking loop, right? Step into those aligned actions and that flow and feeling good in your day. So, what's one decision that you're making today? You're committing to making without overthinking this week or today, right? I would love for you to share it with me. And I would love to invite you to come to a think tank. This is a beautiful way of clearing the slate. It's a free opportunity for you to come in and take time to be in energy of others, clearing that mental clutter and finding ways to build momentum through mindfulness. So I'm your host, Becky Ploutz. Thank you for tuning in to the Choose on Purpose podcast. Until next week, love yourself, live fearlessly, and do all things with purpose.